Welcome back. So let's go ahead and create another package for keeping our service layer. So click on the root and right click and save package. We can give this name as service or it can be also called as business, but we will keep it as service. In this service, we will create a interface first, and that interface name we will give as property service, and this will be an interface. And we can keep some methods in it. First method is proper private or wait sorry public property DTO save property. So what we are doing is whichever property user wants to save, we are going to return the same property back. So now this is the property service. So let's create an implementing class that will implement our property service interface. So the implementing class we will keep in IMPL package. So we need to create another package here, new package, implementation IMPL. So here we will say class property service IMPL class, and this class we will say implements property service interface. Now we will hover and it will ask us to add unimplemented methods. Done. So why did we do this? So this we did it because it's always good to create an interface and the implementing class. In future, there can be a situation that there can be more than one implementing class for the same interface. So that there will be different implementation logic in different classes for the same method. So this kind of pattern is called factory design pattern, where there can be multiple implementation class of one interface, and based upon whose implementation class object gets created, that particular class logic gets executed. So this is called factory design pattern. All right, now we have to tell Spring that take care of object creation for this particular class. What we will say to Spring, you from now on take care of creation of object, giving memory to this and destroying memory for this class. You should take it from now on by creating a singleton bean instance for this class. So for that we could use multiple annotation, either at the rate service or at the rate configuration or at the rate component or at the rate repository. We can use or even at the rate controller. But as this is a service layer, we should go for at the rate service. All the annotation that I showed, component, configuration, repository, all this has the same functionality. That is to make this particular class object as a singleton instance, which means the object will be only created once until our application is running. And whenever next time a request is made for this class object, the same object which was created once will be returned, which means singleton, making it singleton is much more memory efficient. So Spring automatically does that. If we put at the rate service annotation on top of a class, it's going to make sure it's going to create a singleton instance for that class. So we can make a class singleton by putting any of the one annotation like component, configuration, service or repository, but I chose to use service because this is service layer. Alright. Now this singleton is a pattern, design pattern, another design pattern where we are saying that create single instance of a class and reuse it whenever it is asked for. So what will be the other pattern where more than one instance of the same class is used again and again, or created again, more than one instance of the same class is created again and again? That is actually opposite of singleton and it is called prototype. So here we have singleton is a creational. So design patterns are of three types: creational, structural, behavioral. So we are talking about creational design pattern where we just saw factory design pattern where basically we define one interface and there can be multiple implementing class. Based upon whose implementing class memory is given, that particular implementation class functionality is invoked. That is factory design pattern. Singleton design pattern we just saw by annotating our service with @service. That class becomes singleton, which means only one instance or object of that class will get created and reused throughout the application lifecycle until the time we stop the server explicitly. Opposite of singleton is prototype, where multiple instances of the same class will get created and they will get destroyed. For example, if I create property DTO object, it can keep one property for, let's say, apartment. If I create another property DTO of, then it will keep a row house. It will keep another. So property DTO should be of prototype design pattern. If it will be of singleton, then we have problem, which means everyone is seeing the same property detail, which is not good. Hence, objects like this DTO or model or entity, they should be used as prototype. By default, they are prototype only, which means we should not make them one instance and use it again and again. Rather, every time a new instance of this should be created so that to keep the local copy of the data. But these kind of classes can be singleton, whose one instance can be created and used as many times as we want. So now where we know what is the difference between a singleton bean, because this is also called a bean and this is a prototype bean. Bean is nothing but just another Java class with a fancy name. Now what we will do is we will try to pass the data that we have in our controller layer. So we have the data from the client now here. We want the data in our service layer and we also have created a service layer with its implementation class. So there has to be a way that controller should talk to service. Only then this DTO data can be transferred. And DTO is also called a data transfer object. So there should be a transfer from one layer to another layer. All right. And that is how the thing how we do that is with the help of another Spring mechanism called dependency injection. What it means is here we have our controller. So here we are going to create a class level variable of our interface of service. So private property service, press control space and then press control space, it will suggest you a name, property service, and do not forget to write Autowired here. If you don't write Autowired, then this will be having null as a data because no one is giving it memory. Only when we make it Autowired here, Spring is going to create an object of the implementing class because we have asked it to make it singleton, and then that object will be pointed by this particular interface instance which has been injected here. So if we don't do Autowire, Spring is not going to create an instance of this class. Hence, the instance or the this property service interface will be pointing to null. Let me show you that. So now that we have done this, so from here we can now call property service dot save property and pass this complete property DTO as is. Pass this complete property DTO as is. Okay, and here it is returning something, but we don't have to worry about that now. Now let's say I will comment this and then I will try to run my application. You will see what will happen. Put a debug here and start the application in the debug mode, and we will try to hit the service via postman. We will see the interface value will be null because we did not do Autowire. If we don't do Autowire, Spring is not going to do dependency injection for us. What do you mean by dependency injection? Dependency injection is another design pattern by which, or it is kind of a process by which Spring will make sure an object of the singleton bean is created and its corresponding interface is pointing to that object. And when we do Autowired, it makes that instance of that object available to this interface in a particular controller class, or may it be any other class, any other bean. Because wherever you are doing this Autowired, that should be also a bean, like at the rest controller, at the rate service, at the rate repository, at the rate configuration, doesn't matter. It should be at least one of this. So let's say now our application is started. Let's go and try to hit this. It is stopping now here. We will see now this property DTO is populated, which is good. And this is by default prototype in design pattern nature, which means every time new one will create it. But when we see this value of this property service, this is null because Spring did not create the instance of this bean, even though we gave it as address service. Because we did not do it auto add. When we do auto add, then only this bean instance will be created and it will be injected into this controller's this variable. That is called dependency injection. So let's stop this and now uncomment this, and now I will show you. And now we will also go and put a debugger here. So now let's start the application. Let's close this class not needed. Also close this one which is not needed. Right click, close. So let's see if our application is started. It is starting up. So it has started. Now if I go to Postman and try to hit it again, we will see now this is no more null. It has an object of an IMPL. If you see what it says property service IMPL object it's holding. Sorry. Which means now we can go inside this method call. And how do we do that? By pressing this button F7. So it will go inside this. And we are passing the same data which we received from the client to controller. We are passing that same DTO to our service. See? So what we are doing? Let's check in our picture. From the client we got the data. We passed it to controller. From there now we passed it to our service. We have successfully done that. So let's continue in our next video to pass this data to even to the repository layer and save it into the database. So thank you for watching this video. I will see you in the next video.